Hey guys, Ozone here. I am with Simon and Eric, and today we'll be discussing the Albaz Strike Structure Deck.
Sup? I'm Simon. I make videos for FCG sometimes, so I'll be appearing for this one. I've been having a lot of fun with these cards, so excited to talk about them.
I've looked over a few of them. I haven't really tested too much of them, so I'm excited to take a deeper look at them.
Yeah, I think Simon here won a Zodiac recently playing this deck, so he should know a lot.
Yeah, I played this last, I think, 5 rounds or something. I played a branded Despia with DP. It was pretty fun.
Alright, I guess we'll dig right in. Alright, so this is Albaz, the star of the deck. This card has been unplayable for I think 2 years now. And now it is playable, but not in the way people think it is. Simon, if you have any words about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Garnet for the deck at this point. You can use his effect, which is basically a Super Poly, but like you can respond to it, so it's like infinitely worse than Super Poly. Albaz has a bunch of fusions that require him as material, and so the entire deck kind of rotates around summoning out those fusions. And their newest card, or one of their best newest cards, is Branded Fusion, which uses Albaz deck as material. So he's finally now viable because you don't actually have to play him, pretty much.
What's your opinion on playing multiple Albazes for
Uh,
Brandon Fusion?
it's like tough to get into that without going super in depth about the deck. I feel like there are situations with the deck where he gets stuck, like banished forever if you play only one. But I think you can get away with playing one, so I'm not sure. I've seen a lot of like really pure lists on two Albaz, and I've seen a lot of like more hybrid variants play only one. So I think we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, understandable. Next up we have Branded Fusion. This is the reason why the Despia deck is tier 1 in OCG for like, I think 3, 4 weeks now running.
Yeah,
I
well, I
mean,
mean, like they have a ban list and like different meta, but I mean this card is ridiculous.
yeah, this this is a custom card in its entirety.
Yeah.
People think
So
Fusion Destiny is bad. This is basically that on crack.
we probably have to talk about some of the Albaz fusions to give context to why this is good. So this uses from hand, deck, or field, and there's two Albaz fusions that are notable that I think we should probably just cover now, actually. So the first is
Mhm.
Rebellion, which is in the extra. This takes any dark monster's material. So now your branded fusion sends any dark monster from deck to grave, which is kind of crazy. The other one is Albion, which is in the side deck, and this takes a light monster's material. And so basically, your brand of fusion now flexes into Foolish Burial for any light or dark monster from deck, while also dumping Albaz, and then you summon a fusion, and then the fusion does stuff. So it's just a lot of value out of one card. The downside is that you get fusion locked for the whole turn, which is not ideal. But in this deck, the fusions are like so powerful that you can just play like a pure fusion deck, pretty much.
Yeah, the ability to foolish any attribute from light or dark is actually insane. Because I saw you foolishing Banshee.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
cited into Necro Banshee for Zombie World, and that's really relevant because Floowandereeze gets a really insane card in the next main set, and they were a tier 1 contender in the OCG for quite a while. And if you dump Banshee against Floowandereeze, even going second, like the card is insanely strong in that matchup. So a lot of cool things you can do. OCG is like tooling around with a bunch of different things. You can summon Colossus with certain techs. You can in TCG side, you can summon Dragoon, which is really funny. Um, Lots of like crazy stuff you can do with branded fusion.
So what do you usually send off for Brandon Fusion? Since if we're
So
new, yeah.
yeah, so there's a couple of different searchers for branded fusion. The best by far are the Despia cards, and the reason for that is because Despian Tragedy, the level one, searches out Aliber, which is the searcher for branded fusion. So you typically will dump Tragedy with your branded fusion as a dark, to kickstart your fusion plays, and then the tragedy gets you another Despia card, which is either going to be Aliber for like more follow up, or a normal summon that same turn, or it's going to be Ad Libitum, which is a really cool combo piece, and some combos will probably show off later.
Yeah, Dredger's kind of crazy because I think it also recycles the card too.
Yeah, all the Despia cards have like three effects, and they were like really underwhelming for the longest time. But now that the deck has like playable cards, some of these like random like auxiliary effects are just ridiculous in the long game.
Oh, yeah, I ad libitum. I remember this card because this card's actually low key insane. I have seen this summon DPE multiple times now, Mirror Jade multiple times.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the fact that like now we have fusion cards that are like playable. So we'll get into that probably a bit later.
Okay. Let's next card is Spriggan's Kit.
Yeah, this is kind of Oliver 2 in the deck. It's a bit worse because so basically the searches any branded spell trap, and then you have to put a card from your hand to the bottom of your deck. So it does neg you, which is probably the worst aspect of Kit. The upside is that this can recycle a banished or graveyard branded spell trap, which is nice for recycling like one-ofs. But Kit is like I don't know, like I don't know how I feel about her. What do you think?
It's weird. I've played this deck like I want to say like for a few days, and I think I'd rather see Oliver almost every single time. The first effect never comes up for me.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it comes up like after turn one primarily. There's like one Albaz fusion that searches a Springed monster in the end phase, and
Yes.
so that's like a use case for maybe like if you play one kit, you can send that fusion and then you can grab a kit for the turn three follow up where kit is actually like special summonable. But like turn one, she's basically worse Oliver in most scenarios, and in the cases where she actually like isn't worse Oliver, you're like bleeding cards from hand.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
so
Yeah.
I'm currently playing one. I think it depends on your build.
Yeah, I think end phase adding or summoning Kit off of Spriggan is actually kind of cool. I think at least one's fine. I don't know if I'd ever play more than one at that point.
Yeah,
You have
because Oliver
a
also has it has like an e-tele more or less, and so you can
yeah,
play
yeah,
it's,
the Brennan opening.
it's opening a second last card in the side deck. So you play essentially like 5 to 6 copies of Oliver already, and you don't want to
Mhm.
like clog in multiple normals, especially when your normals are bleeding hand advantage. So yeah.
I think what the only upside she has over Aliper is that she can take banished and graveyard branded cards, right?
Yeah, so if you play like one Brandon in red, you can like get her back, which is cool. Also theoretically, like I said, if you open kit plus opening, then you do have a way to try to get to Branded Fusion twice in the same turn, but like it's really expensive. And you're not opening that combo that often, so
Okay. The next card in this little like archetypal cards that don't really support their archetypes that much is
Mhm.
Tri Brigade Courier.
Yeah.
This one
So
was interesting to me, but I've never like actually got to practically use it. What do you think
yeah,
about it?
so the effect is actually really strong. So it's essentially just a monster negate, like it's Gamma that doesn't negate, but you can use it at any time. Or it's Gamma that doesn't destroy. Sorry.
Hmm.
You have to have a fusion that lists Albaz's material though, which you usually do if you can play the game. But if you can't play the game, this card is a brick. Um, and has a graveyard effect as well, I believe. No, a banished effect.
Yeah,
That
the Rhoda for
yeah.
any fallen Albazar card that lists it.
Yeah, so it tutors basically any monster in the deck, which is decent, except like some of the Despia cards. So it's like kind of awkward to use. You rarely see that effect unless you play like Gold Sark, which I have seen. Um, but I've seen this card largely like fall off of OCG lists. There's
Yeah.
like a potential use for this if you play a Dogmatica engine. You can play like Deer Servant
Mm.
and go for Dogmatica Maximus, and then there is a Albaz fusion that searches a Tri-Brigade card in the end phase, and so you can dump that fusion, you can grab Mercurier, and it's just a free negate. So that's pretty strong. But outside of that, I haven't really seen use for this card.
Banishing in engine, is that the only way to do that's Albion and Branded
You
Red?
can it's Albion and Branded in red, and
Okay.
yeah, I mean like the banished effect is just not that strong. So
Yeah, I don't think there's any like specific Albaz card. I guess Ecclesia, but yeah,
yeah.
understandable. The next one is Unlikely Sword Soul Allies, which I've seen this one get a lot of flack. What do you think about this card?
I feel like this card is better in like a Sword Soul variant than in this deck. I don't really know what it's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Sword Soul's the only one that doesn't have like an Albaz Worm fusion, right?
Yeah, this has like a I don't know, like the Sortal cards themselves don't really interact with the fusions very much, and so it's like a bit awkward to incorporate this. This can be special summon off Ecclesia, but it doesn't do anything when you do that. So I'm not really positive what this card is trying to accomplish in this deck. It's like a cool battle trap that's like unexpected, I guess. And then the graveyard effect is not that relevant in pure like Despia or Branded because you're oftentimes not playing any light spellcasters that meet these criteria besides like maybe like a one of Ecclesia.
Yeah,
So this probably doesn't see play.
I think I saw some Albaz Sword Soul in the OCG, but like they look so I don't know how that deck plays.
So that deck design, there's a quick play in the side deck here called I think Branded High Spirits, and this searches Ecclesia because now there is a Worm fusion. So if you hover over Mirror Jade, this is the first Albaz Worm fusion, which means that if you open a Worm in Pure Sword Soul, you can pitch it for High Spirits, and then you can grab Ecclesia, which is like a minor consistency piece. And because you're already on the fusion, you can tech like small copies of the branded fusion package just to get to cards like Ecclesia and High Spirits.
Oh, that's
So
pretty
that's
cute.
like it's like a minor variant.
And what, you
Um,
lone fire to Taya?
yeah,
Yeah,
kinda. It's just like you can never play the fusion cards and the Sword Soul cards in the same turn because branded fusion locks you for the entire turn, not just after you activate it. And so it's like I'm not really sold on this hybrid, but it's definitely cute, like in theory. Outside of that, I haven't seen Unlikely Sword Soul allies see like any play.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That card's weird. I don't. I guess it's just continuing the trend of like Dogmatica cards turning to Sword Soul cards.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The next card I believe is the Magical Meltdown. I don't remember that. Yeah, Paradise Branded. This is
Yeah.
Meltdown without the good part of Meltdown, I think. The Rhoda effect for
I mean, like,
Alistair.
I think it's debatable. They're both really good parts. I was
Yeah.
considering playing this just for the meltdown clause where you can't negate stuff. Because I think a big problem the deck has is brand fusion being negated. It's just like a huge bottleneck for the deck. But this doesn't stop Ash on brand
Yes.
fusion
Yeah.
because that's really major. This is exactly like meltdown in that regard. It doesn't stop cards that negate the effect of brand fusion. And then it has a Rhoda effect that searches basically any monster in the deck, but it only does that after you fusion summon, so it's not a play starter. If this searched on activation like Meltdown, this would be like a 3 of instantly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But they can't ash the search at least once you fusion.
yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's just like it's a situation that a lot of decks are in where you have like Albaz, which searches any branded spell trap, and there's like 2 to 3 cards you want to search before you ever search Paradise Branded.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a card you want to hard open plus your engine, but then it just ends up being a brick if you don't open your engine, and so I don't think you'll see this card played very much. Um, Although like the clause that protects your stuff is like insane. Like we already see this with current format, like invoked DPE. Meltdown is like an insane card, so the effect is great. It's just like this is like the 3rd or 4th card you'd ever want to search, so it's just like it doesn't make it.
Quite unfortunate. Also, the search pool is kind of a little whack compared to Albaz and Kit's search pool.
Yeah. I keep saying it searches any monster in the deck, but that's like actually not that true. Because like you want to search Despia cards a lot of the time. The Despia cards don't list Albaz's as in their card text. So.
Also, Albaz doesn't say Albaz in the text.
Yeah, the Despia cards don't mention that.
Yeah,
so
that's so sad.
It's like that kind of limiting.
The next card is, I think, my friend Singaporean Tech. Branded Blade. Yeah, this one's... It's weird because you just banish a whole bunch of spell and traps from the graveyard to summon tokens, and they're like really big tokens.
Yeah, they're 2,500 for no reason, which is funny. I had a friend who was playing this just to push damage. He was having trouble killing the opponent on turn 3, and so if you just set Branded Blade off one of the Albaz fusions, you just get like a bunch of giant tokens for no reason. Yeah, I mean that's pretty neat. That's about like the only use case. I haven't really seen this played in the OCG. It has one really cool graveyard effect, which recycles a banished Fallen of Albaz, which is like the only way to do that aside from Lubellion, which is like a cute little minor thing, but I don't think it's needed. You just play a second Albaz at that point. Yeah. Like if you wanted to like recycle your Albazes, you just play a second Albaz at that point. So I don't think you would play this.
Yeah, this is a very funny meme card, so understandable.
Yeah.
And the next card, I think I've seen people split on. I personally like this card a lot, but you have to jump through a few hoops to actually use it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of this card. This is the counter trap. It's essentially Solemn Warning if you control an Albaz fusion, which is pretty strong. It's really good against like Rite of Aramesia, which is going to be very relevant around the time that the structure deck comes out. So that's pretty good. It negates Fusion Destiny as well in the TCG because we still have to deal with that. And it has a really strong graveyard effect where it resets or re-adds a branded spell trap in your graveyard. And so this is excellent for just like you set branded fusion and you activate it, or you add back branded and red and you get to activate it at the same turn.
Yep. You also don't even need to control the fusion volume, which I think is really cool.
Oh no, you're right. Yeah. So you can recycle fusions from grave as well. Just typically you will always end up with Albaz fusion on field to get those fusions in the grave in the first place, and so Usually this ends up being set while you still have it in Albaz Fusion, but it's very strong. If you can pull it off. If you can't pull it off, then like it's a hard brick. So
Yeah.
I'm fond of this card because there are some combos where you open like decent combos of cards, and you can set this actually very easily. So I think we're going to go over one of those later.
Yeah, I'll be on. Yeah. I guess what do you want to do? The fusion monsters next?
I think Mirror Jade would be good to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I think. Or
yeah,
if you
so
want to
this
start,
is Albaz and basically any extra deck monster as material. So this card is kind of the boss monster of the deck now. It has a quick effect non-targeting banish, where you basically like you do an extra deck foolish as cost of any of the Albaz fusions, which is in itself really strong because all of the Albaz fusions have like relevant graveyard searching effects. So this dumps like Albion and you get a spell trap in the end phase, or this dumps like Sprint and you get Kit in the end phase. And so that alone is really strong. And then it's like a non-targeting banish on top of that, which is ridiculous. It also has this really obnoxious second effect where if you like get rid of it through almost any means aside from like putting it back in the extra deck, it has a delayed like nuke on your board at the end phase. And that's really frustrating to deal with because you have to like have a negate for it when you get rid of it. Because if you allow that to go through, it just applies in the end phase without activating, and it just blows up your whole field. So,
yeah. Card is crazy. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with this card, actually.
It really is. Like, I don't know. It's kind of an underrated card because you can kind of just sit on it, and it applies so much pressure by itself, and the opponent has to like jump through hoops to figure out how to get rid of this without like blowing up their board.
Yeah, this card's really deceptively strong. Like, if we could just go by it one by one, the materials mean that you can just summon Albaz into like a board and then just force out something with it.
Yeah, it turns out as into a board breaker. You can kind of just like quote unquote super poly one of their monsters, and they basically have to negate it.
Yeah, leftover Sigmorg, stuff like that. It's just this card's crazy. The cost, you already mentioned that. Like, all the fusions you dump are gonna float too, which is kind of crazy. The banish effect doesn't target. Also, it can be any monster. It doesn't have to be your opponent. So you can turn one, dump a card, and then banish one of your own, which I think I see happen a lot.
Yeah, there are some cool combos where you Mirror Jade on turn 1 just to access your searches in the end phase, and you banish like an extra Albaz that you weren't using.
Yeah. And then I think the biggest one, this card's not once per turn, I think, on the banish part.
Yep, that's like a really deceptive part of this. So the translation on this is actually not that great. It says like you can only use this effect. You can't use this effect next turn. It should say more something like this card cannot use this effect next turn. And so there are combos that are going to happen where you use this effect, you get rid of Mirror Jade, you summon it back, or you summon a second Mirror Jade, and then that effect is alive. And so you end up with like potentially multiple banishes for this card in the same turn.
Yeah, what do you usually bring it back with Adlib, right?
Yeah, Adlib has this effect where if you fuse with it, you can revive a banished fusion or a fusion in your grave. So essentially you'll get the Mirror Jade off the field and then you bring it back. And that's also really good into the board breakers. If they Dark Ruler or they drop it your Mirror Jade and you just get rid of it, bring it back, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, Space Godzilla here mixed the deck quite well. And then I guess we have next to it is Albion's Mirror, which is Lubion. If you wanna.
Yeah, Lubellion. So this takes a dark monsters material. This is the typical one you go for because you usually want to be dumping darks. It's basically well, what's a good parallel for this? I don't know if there is one, but it fusion summons. Yeah, I guess it fusion summons by shuffling back fusion material from your field, graveyard, or banished, which is nuts.
It's
like Pendragon fusion. Sorry. Yeah.
It's nuts. I don't know. Like, it's just hard to describe how good this card is until you play this deck. Essentially, you'll typically be shuffling back, usually itself and the Fallen of Albaz you just sent for Branded Fusion to summon your Mirror Jade. And there are some variations you can do, but that's the typical like vanilla play. And what that means is that this card is like really ridiculous into like spot removal, because if you get rid of Lubellion, it still will just put itself back. Like, it doesn't target its material because it doesn't make sense to do that. So if you like get rid of the Lubellion like mid chain, it'll still just put itself back and it'll still summon Mirror Jade. So
what do you think of the discard?
Yeah, that's like the one bad part about this deck is that you end up bleeding a lot of cards. which is unfortunate. We've seen some OCG lists play like the Frightfur engine just to like get card advantage, because you have to discard and like mulligan so much in this deck, and it can be kind of like taxing to like get rid of real cards. So that's definitely a downside. But I mean, the card is so strong that it makes up for it.
I mean, patchwork seems kind of mandatory. I almost just taking a look at these cards.
Yeah, I'm torn on it. It's very popular in the OCG. Part of that is because they have like no other good engines to play besides like Brave, because DPE is banned over there, or Fusion Destiny is banned over there, and like Dogmatica stuff is neutered and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we can talk about Frightfur maybe more in a later video, but it's got definitely pros and cons to it.
So I noticed that you don't play that many lights usually in this deck. Is this being a light monster like important? Like, do you always make Albion off of this card?
You typically go Lubellion into Mirror Jade most of the time. In some lines, you dump a light to go for Albion. But I would say you do that pretty rarely. The reason is because you want Albaz back in deck, or else your brand fusions are just dead every turn. So
Yeah.
you like need to recycle him. And so typically when you do go for Albion, you're still going to go for Lubellion later in the same turn off the Albion anyway. So for context, Albion is a Miracle Fusion, and so you can dump the Albaz to Grave with Brand Fusion to summon this. This will banish the Albaz from Grave to summon Lubellion, and then Lubellion puts the Albaz back in deck, so you're like good to go for the next turn. But pretty rarely do you go for like a light off Branded Fusion. It does happen, but not super often.
And then I guess we can go Branded Red and then Guardian Chimera. So Branded Red's not in the structure deck, but I think this card's equally important for it.
Yeah, just because like you play so many Despia cards, just because Albur is such a good like engine piece in this deck, you play like a lot of other branded adjacent support. Branded in Red targets a Despia or Fallen Valbaz in your grave. You put it back in your hand, which is important. And then you fusion summon any level 8 or higher fusion monster by banishing those materials from your hand or field. So that's really strong because a lot of the Despia cards have effects that go off when you send them to grave or banish them with a card effect. So Branded Red will trigger all of those. The notable one is Adlib. So Adlib will float into any graveyard or banished fusion when you banish it with a card effect, more or less. So what'll happen a lot of the time is you're going to Branded Red, you're going to fuse with an Adlib in hand, and then the Adlib is going to bring back one of your fusions you've already used that game. So this can recycle your Mirror Jades, and then the effect is live again. If your opponent like DD Crowed your DPE, you can Adlib back to DPE, and then suddenly your entire loop is live again. There's just a lot of really strong uses for this card. And the fusion that makes this possible is Guardian Chimera, which is a card we're getting.
Yeah.
I think we're getting this in Battle of Chaos, right?
Yes,
the next
it's
set.
Battle of Chaos.
This card is kind of ridiculous. Like, the Despia deck didn't really have a play before this card came out, but like this card single-handedly gives them like really strong follow-up and disruption. So you fuse this with only monsters in your hand and field, and then you draw cards equal to the number of monsters you use in the hand, and you destroy your opponent's cards equal to the number of cards you use in that field. So if you fuse with like 2 from hand, 1 from field, you will draw 2 cards and then pop a card in the field, non-targeting. So it gives you like follow-up because it refills your hand. It gives you a disruption because it pops stuff on field. And it gives you a monster to make off your Branded Red that has totally generic materials. So you can like fuse off your dead fusions and like an Adlib, and then you can bring back your dead fusions, which is just crazy.
Yeah, this card's crazy because I usually see people go like, they end on 1 card in hand or something like that, then they activate Branded Red after I like dealt with the cards on the field. They grab Tragedy or Adlib, banish all of those, summon this card, and then now I'm staring at them having like 4 cards in hand, still 2 interrupts on field. It's just
yeah. They go like Channeling 1, Channeling 2, Channeling 3. Suddenly they have 2 giant fusions on field, and they have like 5 cards in hand.
This card is crazy. Disgusting. I think the only drawback though is that you can't actually use the turn 1 to like if brick hand scenarios, stuff like that.
Yeah, you can't just like dry fire this and get draws because you have to destroy stuff. So if your opponent doesn't have cards you can pop with this, you don't get to draw anything. Which is a little unfortunate. I wouldn't say it's hugely relevant, but it's definitely like a minor drawback. He also has 3,300 attack, by the way, so he's giant for no reason.
I guess also if you play Patchwork, this card's untargetable for some reason.
Yep. If Polly's in your graveyard, he's untargetable, which is
Yeah, this
minor when it comes
is
up.
just crazy card. Is this once per turn? Okay, yeah.
Yes. Thankfully.
Speaking of Phoenix Enforcer, I forgot to mention that I see some lists play 2. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so Lubellion, if you hover over that in the extra deck, this has an effect that fusion summons by recycling your dudes from graveyard, banished, or field or whatever. That's a generic effect, so it doesn't have to summon Albaz fusions. So in theory, what you can do is you can go into your DPE, you can resolve your Celestial for 2 draws, and then you can Lubellion put back your DPE Garnets, summon back a second DPE, which is really funny. You can shuffle back a DPE that your opponent outed with Zeus or something, and you can shuffle back 2 Destiny Heroes and summon back another DPE. And so it comes up, I would say a bit rarely, because again, the issue is if you're summoning Lubellion, you have your Albaz out of your deck, and you want to put your Albaz back in the deck so your branded cards are turned back on. So you typically want to be summoning Albaz cards with Lubellion, but it comes up where you don't have to, and it's ridiculously strong when it does come up.
Okay, yeah, this card is cracked, dude.
Yeah, this card also has really good synergy with like Forbidden Droplet. Because
Oh,
like I
yeah,
said,
Yeah.
sure.
it doesn't care what happens to it. It's like this deck is so strong the spot removal. You can just Lubellion to try to negate. You chain Droplet. You send the Lubellion. You shuffle back the same Lubellion you just sent, and the Albaz, and it's insane value.
Yeah, this card is, well, I guess the structure deck is actually insane. One of the best ones we had in a long time. But I guess before we finish up, are there like any cards or ideas you had in mind about this?
Um, I mean, general thoughts. I think the deck building TCG side is going to be a little different from OCG just because our card pools and our metas are so different. Because like we have DPE still legal. For the brief period of time when this deck was out in the OCG before their last ban list, DPE was very common in this deck. Not that there's any like extreme synergy. It's just like your fusion locked in DPE is a fantastic fusion. So it's just like another like power card that will just win you games. In terms of engines, there's like the Fright First stuff, which is being played like on and off. There's the Brave engine or the Adventure Token engine,
Oh,
which
yeah. Mhm.
is pretty popular in the OCG. Uh, Even though their adventure stuff is like neutered, like they have like I think semi limits on their important cards, but even so, like the deck is it's a pretty strong variant that's appearing. And you would think that it's like not that great because it locks you out of your normal summon effects, and so you want to like normal summon Aliber. But what happens is they play 3 of the E-Telly, and they can kind of bypass that.
Oh, yeah,
And
Brandon
what?
opening. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what the engine gives you is the ability to like insulate your branded fusion, which is one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck is like getting your branded fusion negated. There's like just not a lot of ways around that. So having your adventure cards to protect that is pretty cool.
It's weird. This theme is so generic because like it covers light darks. I know fusion decks love it. Random decks love it. I see Witchcrafter Albaz pop up. I've seen Gravekeeper Albaz. I've seen like Weather Painter Albaz.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of cool decks that just like if you don't need to like use your extra deck that much, then you can kind of just splash this in, especially if you get utility out of the light dark toolboxing.
Yeah, it's jeez, dude. This covers so much.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever figured it out, but did Branded Fusion, is that a OTK by itself?
I don't believe so. I think there was a really janky line involving searching opening off Aliver and then summoning Adlib to attack boost that like got
Oh,
some
yeah.
amount of damage. I think it ended up not working just because like there's some like battle phase restrictions in this deck. Like Rebellion can't attack the same turn to use its effect.
Yeah, Brandon Red can attack
Yeah, if
directly.
you brand in a red for Guardian Chimera, it can't attack, and so it's a bit awkward. But I mean, the deck just like this is kind of not like it's not a wombo combo deck. This is like a deck with a really crazy resource game that has a really robust turn one board that forces you to kind of like play awkwardly to out it. It reminds me a lot of Orcus in that regard. Just like it has insane recovery, insane grind game, and you just can't let it out resource you. So you have to like negate their power cards, and that's kind of what it plays like.
Yeah, it's weird. I consider Bell sometimes, but then like Lubiani can chain block it sometimes depending on what the card you use. Or yeah, Lubiani I think it's called, yeah.
Yeah,
Bell stops
Lubellion.
red, but that's about it. It's just awkward.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward, and there's like even text you can play. You can play Shifter in this deck potentially in pure
Oh yeah,
variant.
jeez.
It's frustrating to deal with.
Retaliating C may not even do anything. That's insane.
Yeah, it's all right against it because they can still summon the fusion under like retaliating, but
Right.
then the fusion like doesn't do anything under retaliating. Um, but also no other deck is playing with it up, so they have to get rid of it, and then your fusion's back online.
All the Despia's trigger off being banished too, so it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Yeah, it's neat. So this is like the really basic play off just branded fusion. I think every Yugi tuber has already covered this. So this is just an example of what you do and why you play like Despia cards. You can probably fast forward a bit. You're gonna branded fusion, dumping your tragedy to summon your Lubellion. And the tragedy is going to add Aliber, which is strong because like it gives you a normal summon that's searchable off your play starter, which is cool. You Lubellion itself back to summon your Mirror Jade, which is 1 disrupt, and your Aliber as Brandon Red. And you end up with this setup, which is like very modest. Like you summon like 3 times or something, and you have 3 cards on the field. But what this does is you get to add back your Tragedy off your Brandon Red, and you can fuse all 3 of your guys for Guardian Chimera. Your Mirror Jade is also a disruption that banishes a card non-targeting, and then whatever you dump is getting you another branded card at the end phase for your turn 3. So this is kind of like the bread and butter of just branded fusion. It's very modest, but like the amount of follow-up it gives you is really nuts because you're also getting 2 draws off the Guardian Chimera. And it's like difficult to kind of board break this deck sometimes because the threats are so like spread out. Like Brandon Red plays around like Dark Ruler, for example. So just an example of like the basic combo. You have any thoughts
So,
on how this feels?
what do you think is like a good answer to this board?
If you can deal with the Brandon Red, whether that's like DD Crow or like shotgunning like a Cosmic Cyclone, then you just have to deal with the Mirror Jade, which is pretty neat. I don't think you're ever going to be able to like hard answer everything on this board and prevent all follow up. But a really good answer to this deck is like being able to play through the disruption and then just kill them. Like just stop the follow up by just killing them, for example, or just setting up like a bunch of negates and just stopping all their end phase stuff.
Yeah, you're gonna get real punished if you can't kill him. The
Yeah.
Raigeki, delayed Raigeki, and I think Oliver also has a random floating effect too.
Yeah.
It has a float
negates.
effect that like comes up.
Yeah.
So the first one was like a pretty standard thing that you've probably seen before. The second one is an example of like some more intricate things you can do with Despia cards. So this is going to be, I think it's Aliber plus Branded Fusion. There's like a couple of different 2-card combos that go into this. But this is going to show off how strong Adlib is in this deck. You're going to Aliber for Branded Red, or whichever one you're missing, I guess. You're going to Branded Fusion for the same line as before, where you go Tragedy plus Albaz into your Lubellion. And there's going to be discards here. I just didn't show them, but you do need to discard typically once in these combos. Your Tragedy is going to get, this time, Adlib instead of Aliber. And so if you forgot, Adlib revives your fusions when you use it for fusion material, more or less. Your Lubellion is going to put itself back and the Albaz back to get Mirror Jade. And then here, we're going to make use of that utility of Mirror Jade to banish your own Aliber, basically, just to get a fusion in the grave. So we're going to be dumping Albion, which is the Spell Trap Searcher, and banishing the Aliber because we kind of no longer need it. You could also banish Mirror Jade, but I like leaving it on field because they just have to answer it. Like, they have to deal with this card first, and then you're going to just chain your cards to disrupt them. So this is a use case for the counter trap because now we have the counter trap and Brandon Red. You don't really need the counter trap in this deck, but I do like it for this kind of scenario where you have this setup. So because we have this Mirror Jade, the counter trap is live, and we're going to go to the next turn. When they commit anything, you can flip your Brandon Red, and you're going to fuse your Adlib, Tragedy, and your Mirror Jade. So this is the play that Sean was talking about,
Yeah.
where
This is gross,
you had
yeah.
like 3 cards in hand or something, and you're going to fuse into your Guardian Chimera, and you're going to go Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, Chainlink 3, and just get a whole bunch of cards back.
Yeah, this is so gross.
So your Adlib puts back your Mirror Jade, which is now completely live because it's considered a different copy of Mirror Jade. Like, that copy did not use this effect that turn. You're going to get another Aliber off your Tragedy, which is follow-up, and then your Guardian Chimera is going to draw 2 cards. and you're gonna pop 1 card. Your Mirror Jade Banish is online again, and you can dump more follow-up, and then you can flip the counter trap to Solemn Warning anything, and you can put back your Mirror Jade or your Fusions Engrave. You get more follow-up off the fusions you dump in grave, and so now you're up like +4 or 5 cards in hand from last turn. And it's just really difficult and really frustrating to try to like play around this.
I 100% agree. This is insane. Yeah, even a placesetter for next turn, and the kid also could potentially search a card on end phase. It's just a lot.
It's fun to play. I think Adlib is definitely one of the most fun cards to use in this deck. So I enjoyed this playstyle. That may change in a few months depending on how tired people are of this deck, but it's definitely one of the best. I agree that it's one of the best structures we've had in a long time. It reminds me kind of the Salamangreat structure.
Hey, respect. I think this is the lore deck, so we're potentially getting even more support in Dimension Force, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to continue to get more and more. I honestly think down the road something is going to happen to this, but that's a long time from now.
Right, yeah.
This deck is insane, though, I will say. With that said, though, is there any last words? Closing thoughts, anyone?
I'm just excited to see another fusion deck that's not Invoked or Shadal from the past few years.
Oh, yeah, Shadal. Oh, I love me some Shadal, not gonna lie. Back in my day,
the novelty is here now. Time will tell if we get as tired of normal summon Oliver in 6 months as we are tired of normal summon Alistair.
True.
But
that's it though. Yeah, that is the Albaz Strike structure deck review. We might have more combos on the way. This is just the beginning. This is honestly like I think 1 month in for the OCG, so there's a ton of more variations to come.
Yeah, a lot of development happening.
Yeah. With that said, that is it. Ozone out.